Good morning and welcome to the Null channel. If this is your first time here, well, I do a lot of educational long form content, but on Monday mornings, I like to reach out, hang out with you guys as the community, talk about what's happening in open source and the clouds, and touch base with you all. So that's what's happening today. That's what's happening this morning is welcome to the Null News. Now, as a precaution here in the morning, I have just a few standard things. First, if you're Google reviewing this video, please, I don't do any offensive content, so please stop doing that so you can stop reviewing my videos. Second, all opinions here are that of my own. I don't represent my current, past, or former. Yeah, former would still be past. Future is what I was thinking. That's the other F word, but not the F word you were thinking about. Employers. So yeah, all content here, all thoughts and stuff are that of my own. So anyways, keep that in mind. With no further ado, if you're new, we're just going to talk about the news. We're going to talk a little bit about security first, and then we're going to move on to clouds and cloud-specific news, and then we're going to talk about some open source, some blog articles I found interesting and helpful that I learned from, and just stuff that's going on in the world. Good morning, Russell. How are you doing? If you are a long-term supporter of this channel, I also want to give you a big shout out and thanks. You all are awesome. Absolutely awesome. All right, first bit of news for security, and this is going to be your biggest thing. Later today, I'm going to be releasing, it will be on the Null calendar, so you can go check out the calendar. I'll leave a link to the Null calendar in the description. But there'll also be a notification on YouTube. This weekend, we're doing another live stream, and that's going to be about hacking. Yeah, security hacking. It's something that I need to learn more about. I warn you, I'm not a pro. Now, a pro's going to, Russell's probably not going to consider himself a pro, but somebody a little more senior at it than I am. And I've been reading up on it for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah. But we're going to go and hack, and we're going to actually learn some of the ways people make our systems vulnerable. I think it's actually really important, as, you know, the shift left, us as developers and software engineers need to be learning and understanding more. And so that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be doing it live. Now, that's probably not going to be a video I leave up, but I might cut it up and make an educational segment out of it for myself, for you guys. So if you're wanting to see a short, condensed video on what we learned, you can wait for that. I probably won't leave the live stream. Live streams are long. They don't really do that well. So same for these news. If you want to go back and see an older one, they're there. They're just not listed. So they're in the news playlist. So you can go ahead and click on that playlist and see all the past videos. They're all there. They're just not listed. And that's going to happen with these live streams as well. They're probably just not going to be listed past them being streamed. I know you're a pro compared to me, Russell, though. That's yeah, I'm not great at it. But we're going to learn, we're going to have fun learning, and that's really what matters. All right, so let's jump into our security net. And I know that I'm dark mode again. I'm working on my lighting. I know that my last video was also dark mode. I actually got a new light. I bought a light. YouTubing actually costs me money, doesn't make me money. I bought a light so that I can actually light things a little bit better. I have some LED strips that I'm programming with Arduinos to actually light up in the background a little. Because I do everything the hardest way and I don't buy pre-made lights because that would be easy. But also expensive. They're expensive. Like $100 for a little light. I'm not doing that. So sorry I'm dark mode. Hopefully in a couple of weeks I won't be as dark mode. Jabril, good to see you. All right. Let's talk about this. Something I don't know many people have talked about. First malware targeting AWS Lambda serverless platform discovered. Now, this isn't the only article. I read several just to validate this, but it's actually a thing. It's actually a thing. AWS Lambda serverless computing has been infected with malware. So, yeah, I don't know. I also hadn't been thinking about this. And this is where hackers are a lot smarter than I am. Or devious, maybe. And a lot more devious than I am. So, yeah, I don't know. I wanted to talk more about this, but I'm not even entirely sure what to say other than this is a sad state. Your serverless. Now, this is for AWS Lambda, but there's a lot of different serverless platforms out there, not just AWS Lambda. So you're thinking about, now I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but the Kubernetes project that gives you serverless on top of Kubernetes. You're talking about GCP's functions. You're talking about all of those different things are part of this. Not that this specific one is part of it, but you have to start thinking about malware in your Lambda functions. So if you're using a lot of Lambda functions, this is definitely articles worth reading. So you can go up and read on the people that discovered the malware and ways to look for it and whatnot. So you need to, if you're using Lambda, you really need to start understanding what implications this has for you. This is another interesting one, nginx. I know a lot of people in the open source world and in Kubernetes use nginx. There is a 0-day remote code execution. That's what RCE stands for, vulnerability. And basically, this is some of the worst vulnerabilities out there because the RCEs actually allow them to run their own code on your servers. A lot of times nginx runs as root, whether it needs to or not. And so it means that you get to execute code with elevated privileges on your machine. So people are going to mine cryptocurrencies with this, just flat out. If you have this vulnerability, they'll mine cryptocurrencies with it. So that being said, definitely make sure that you patch your nginx immediately. All right. Yeah, just more on the AWS Lambda. This should have been like before the nginx was just, of course, it's crypto. Like if it was nothing else, it was going to be crypto. So they mine crypto with it. This I found interesting. This is the clickbait. I wanted to show you guys this because I try to filter this out. This is the clickbait of all titles. Government workers rely on Microsoft. That could be a security problem, Google claims. Google doesn't actually claim it. Google actually just surveyed a bunch of people, and people thought, 55% to be specific, that the government's reliance on Office 365 could make it more vulnerable. Or the government more vulnerable. I don't know. I try to avoid this Actually, I don't. I do a clickbait title all the time. Google likes to shadow ban my live videos, so I have to be extra clickbaity in the title, even though today's is not clickbaity at all. Knative, Russell, thank you. So when I was saying I couldn't think of the name of the Lambda on Kubernetes, that is Knative. Thank you. I couldn't. When you put me on the spot on live video, I struggle sometimes. So Knative. So I don't have a CVE for Knative. That was not me bringing that up as them having a CVE. That was merely me pointing out the fact that, you know, these frameworks are prevalent. It's not just Lambda that you have to think about. If they did it on Lambda, they can do it on another one. That was my only point. Not that they have actually done that. All right, so we're almost done with security, which is good. Hopefully this week is light because I have a long week ahead. Another thing that you want to notice, might know that's coming up is I think this Wednesday I'm going to take part in a raw code clustered challenge, so that's always going to be fun. I'm going to get to bring a team that I've been working to form that is at my current company. So I think it's going to be a fun team building experience. We'll see. It's either going to be team building or team destroying. Not sure. It's going to be fun. We're going to enjoy it. We'll see what we can do. New team though, so it's always fun to get to do a little team building that way. So I'm excited about that. So it's good that we're keeping that short. Another thing that's happening later today is our book club. We're going over building data intensive applications by Martin Klapman, and it's a fantastic book. And if you've missed it but want to join in, you can still do it. It's in the null calendar. Join with those links, and we'd love to see you. All right, let's jump back into the last thing. As far as I can tell, Apple hasn't patched its last two OS releases. It's patched its most current recent release for M1 Max, but the last two before that haven't been patched to pretty big vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities, are actually being actively exploited. That's kind of a shame. They've always supported the last two OS releases, and I know that I've patched my M1s to the latest. But you definitely need to patch, and maybe this is them forcing you to be on the latest. It's kind of sad, but that might be the state of it. Let's move on to the cloud. Google, absolutely. This is the worst. What's new? They talk about this stuff, but they actually didn't talk about the biggest thing they released this week, which was Biglake. Now we can talk about these different things over here, but none of these are really that interesting. Vertex AI model registry is probably the most interesting. So if you're into big ML on GCP, I would definitely look into this if you're doing a lot of AI ML. So definitely look into Vertex AI. I don't do AI ML on GCP, so I don't really know that much, but these two things seem interesting and like they should be something you should check out if you're doing ML on GCP. That being said, the big news to me was their release of Biglake, which wasn't in their what's new, which is weird. And this is the problem I've had with GCP and reporting news on it, is it's almost a full-time job because they release it all over the place and not in one central place. So I'm sure that I missed some GCP news, but yes, Biglake was released. And I actually find it quite interesting. It has just a little bit of GCP lock-in while giving you a lot of choice. So Biglake itself runs on GCP, but the underlying data could run on somebody else's open source or even multi-cloud. I believe they said they supported Azure. So this kind of gives you that data warehousing with your own choice, with unified governance and management at scale. So that's what I'm saying, a little bit of GCP lock-in, because it is locking you into GCP's governance and management and whatnot. Which, if you're using GCP, this isn't a real big deal. But it also gives you some choice on where you store your data. Or if you're somebody that's been storing your data in several different places and you've had to denormalize it and duplicate it and things like this, it actually could give you the chance to unify all of that without all of the copying and stuff. So it might actually make your system work better. I actually think that this type of system is probably like really big news. I think Biglake is actually a big deal. If I was apt at tweeting, I would tweet about it, but I don't actually know how to tweet something interesting in 160 words. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing what people do with Biglake. I think it's quite interesting. All right. Azure, I don't know why I have this up. I do this because I love how open Microsoft is with when things are ending. And they put a lot of work into that. I think that they do the best job of deprecating. GCP just pulls the rug out from underneath you. It's horrifying. I think AWS just doesn't deprecate things for the longest of time. AWS or Azure does. Microsoft has always done a really good job, and they've always done a really good job of supporting things for a really long time, even after they're deprecated. What I do think is really big news here is the ARM64 based Azure VMs can deliver up to 50. Okay, so this is more of a sales pitch here, but the ARM64 based Azure VMs. So I think these are really big. If you can run on ARM, you can probably save money, unless there are a few caveats to that, because you can also use Intel's accelerated, crypto. And so if you're doing things like that, then it could, especially if you're heavy on that, it could. But a lot of things run better and more efficiently, more energy efficient and more cost efficient on ARM64. And so these expanding and, the AWS Graviton instances are another really good proof of this. So these are really big, and they're really big to the cloud. They're really big to your pocketbook if you're running on the cloud. I can't say that enough. I guess I don't know. I probably can't say it enough. Probably have said enough, but they're expanding. They're expanding their ARM-based 64 base machines that you can get, and so that's really cool. All right, so in AWS, really the things that I saw here were this Amazon document database, which a lot of people use with their MongoDB capabilities. Is now there have performance insight is now in preview. This gives you a much clearer picture of or it makes it much easier to understand the performance of your database with pretty graphs and visualizations, not virtualizations, visualizations, and lets you and is going to help you make a more performant database with being able to see that data, because it's really important to understand how your database is functioning, because as we've learned with Martin Klapman's book and whatnot, really the data abstraction layer, your database, really makes assumptions for how you're going to access it, how you're going to use it, how you're going to, all of that type of stuff. And those assumptions actually spill into your application as well. Just like TCP over IP, those assumptions, that abstraction layer makes differences for your layers. So that's yeah. Anyways, so check it out. I think that this is actually pretty cool. More insights is more better. That's what I always say. Amazon Redshift announced support for role-based access control. This is huge. RBAC is huge. It's a good security standard, good security best practice. And rolling this out to more things is more better. And except for my English, that's more bad. Anyways, so this is really good. It also is very much Kubernetes native. A lot of you guys that do Kubernetes are going to feel right at home with RBAC. And so unifying all of that is really good. So if you use Redshift, it now uses RBAC. All right, this is still kind of in the cloud news because it's about Cloudflare, but it is also a Cloudflare blog post. Pipe fail, how a missing shell option slowed Cloudflare down. Really good article. And the reason I'm leaving it in the cloud section, I know I do cover Cloudflare as far as like the news around them goes in the cloud section, but I usually put their blogs in the open source or just general engineering. But the reason I did this is a lot of us develop services online, and sometimes it can be really hard to track down. And one of the things that I love about Cloudflare is their openness to share their own mistakes. And this is all around computing in the cloud and how a simple, stupid mistake can really screw up your service. It's the engineering blog of the week. Thank you, Cloudflare, for providing us fantastics. Look at where we failed and what we learned. And definitely go check this out. It's all, if you guys don't know, this is actually all around pipe fail. So if you don't know what pipe fail is, there's here is a good article on it. I'm gonna put this up there. Pipe fail is a command line thing that you can use to make your your shell script actually just fail out. Anyways, this blog article explains it pretty well. If you don't know what it is, I won't sit here and explain it. But even better than that, it goes into how they found it and everything. So, anyways, definitely go check this out. I think everybody should read it. It's really quite educational. Also read this, because if you write shell scripts that are supposed to be part of automation or anything like that, you absolutely need to follow this to the letter. You need to read this, remember it, or write your shell scripts in Python so you don't have to worry about this. That's actually like, I love to hate on Python, but it does shell scripts much better than shell does. That's all right. Other bits of cloud news. I think that NVIDIA and AMD are really heating up the GPU. So this is really for the AI ML people out there. NVIDIA, this was actually like 2 weeks ago, released their H100 Tensor Core GPU. I sent them an email. I said, hey, look, if you want a complete noob to test this out for you and make a YouTube video on it, I would love to. They haven't replied. So I doubt they send me one. I also think it costs more than my car does. Not even joking. My car costs like $12,000 total, and I'm pretty sure this costs more than that. So probably not getting one. But yeah, it's really heating up. AMD is also looking to up their game in the data centers. It acquired, I want to call it Pensandu. I'm probably destroying that, but Pensandu basically makes networking chips, and is used by Microsoft and Azure and Goldman Sachs. Pretty cool. I'm kind of interested if they're using this for their GPUs for their data centers or whatnot, but this type of stuff, these Tensor Core GPUs, the H100s and AMD's networking and whatnot are all powering your data centers. This is why I included this in the cloud news, because, Azure's using this stuff. This is the stuff that underpins this type of hardware. So, really cool. And I'm excited to see what these people do with this. And yeah, I'd love to get my hands on one of these. I don't even have a machine that would run this, though. I'm pretty sure I don't even have a machine that would run this. So, yeah. All right. That's it for our cloud news. I'd like to take a second right here and say, if you've enjoyed this so far, if you're one of my long-term supporters, thank you. Go ahead and hit that like button. Let Google know that this content is safe. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not safe. I am talking about news. So maybe news isn't safe on their platform. Oh gosh. That is definitely getting banned now. All right, let's talk about some blog articles I found interesting. In the open source technology world, we're going to talk about some projects. We're going to talk about Rust, because I try to talk about Rust at least once per episode. The first thing we're going to talk about is Google. Now, if you guys remember, right, Google laid off their support staff. It now seems like they might be trying to hire more support staff. I'm a little confused. I don't have any articles on it because I could only find one from Business Insider that you had to be like an insider on. And then I was like digging through their job postings. But I didn't have enough time to actually condense the data down for myself. So I don't have anything concrete to show you guys, but it seems like maybe they realized their mistake. Not really sure. But that being said, we have confirmed that they did let about 100 people go. So yeah. Anyways, Google's not quite done making mistakes. Their ex-Google CEO, Eric Schmidt, on why in-office work is better. I don't know how you build great management virtually. Okay. This got even weirder if you went in and read this stuff. Like, for example, he says that conversations about professionalism, which might be particularly necessary at companies full of young employees, are much harder to have virtually. I don't know why that would be. Also, this is, and I used to say to them, this is not college, this is a professional thing. You can't do that, or that might be illegal. Do you hire people that just do random illegal stuff? I don't know. I hire professionals, even out of college. My younger, the people that I've hired that are straight out of college, I've never had to have this conversation with. I don't know. That's just me, but I've never had to have that as, please stop that. That might be illegal. I think that if you're wanting to do it, be remote, you have to change how you do your one-on-ones. At my last company, I had a fantastic manager who had a one-on-one with me every 2 weeks to mentor me. I owe her a lot. She was fantastic. I would say her name, but I didn't get her permission to do that, and I don't want to just drop her name on the internet for all 6 people that watch this. And I had absolutely no problems. So I think that Schmidt is just stuck in the past. If you're working for somebody that's stuck in the past and you're looking for a new job, I happen to be hiring. I'll leave links in the description. Currently, I only hire people in the North America time zone because that's where all my teams are. So North America time zones. You don't have to be in North America, just those time zones. Yeah, we also have teams not in North America. They just aren't my teams. So if you're wanting to do that and you don't want to be forced to go back to the office, I don't know. I'm not a great manager. My boss is, so that makes up for all of it. All right. Snap Advocate at Ubuntu creates a tool to help you migrate from Snap to Flatpak. I actually found this really interesting. I use both Snap and Flatpak. What do you guys use? I think both are really cool. I think both have their advantages. Snap has the entire backing of Canonical. Some people really like to hate on Canonical. I think Canonical does some really good job for the open source community. Sure, they've made missteps, but what company hasn't made a misstep? If you point to one, please. They're fantastic, but every company makes missteps. Every company is out there doing it together, made up of imperfect people like me. I make missteps too. I like to publicly stay when I make a misstep and see where we can learn from it. So I don't have any great hatred for it, but Flatpak is kind of the community standard, whereas Snap, it really is owned and directed by Canonical. So what are you guys' thoughts? Do you use one of them or none of them? I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting that an ex-Snap advocate. I didn't find in this article, and I didn't really find online why they seemingly left. I looked for that. I couldn't find it. If you know who you are, I'm not going to plaster your name on the internet. If you'd like to talk to me and have a conversation about it, I would absolutely love to have that conversation as to why you're working to migrate people to Flatpak. Yeah. All right. Blog article 2 that you should read. If you're on GitHub, which you probably are, and you're doing your open source there, GitHub Advanced Security has secret scanning for open source projects. All right, so we have Russell who is using Arch. Arch is a pretty Arch's AUR is a binary format. I believe you're correct that it builds from source. Flatpak and Snap actually run in containers. They aren't OCI containers. When I say containers, they just use C groups and namespaces, just like OCI containers, to sandbox your application. So I think both of them are pretty cool in that regard, which is a little bit different. But I do believe that if you're running on Arch Linux, Flatpak works on it. So I do believe that. I could be wrong because I don't run Arch, but I do believe that Arch has Flatpak as an AUR, so that you can be able to just install it pretty quickly. Anyways, back onto GitHub Advanced Security, secret scanning. It is just a really big regex. That's really all it is. But it's really fantastic because they partner with a bunch of different companies for that company's secrets. So it's a really big regex, but it's a lot of them. And you don't have to maintain that because it's with all the providers that partner with GitHub, which is over the hundreds. So you have Azure, AWS, GCP, Terraform. They have partnered with a lot of people, and they're looking specifically for those people's secrets. So I suggest if you're an open source project, I'm pretty sure this is free, and you should go turn it on. Because you don't want secrets in your Git repository. Secrets don't belong in code, ever. All right, so like I said, and I promised you, and I know that you've all been waiting for, let's talk about Rust. Rust 160 has been released and has some pretty cool things that are coming up in it. So I know that not all of you are as big of fans of Rust as I am, but if you're really wanting to follow in depth and help out with, my database and my container workload scheduler that I'm building and making videos on are all written in Rust. And there's reasons for that. I do believe that for a system thing like that, Rust is the better language than something like Go or C, for many reasons. It's not just me picking Rust because I'm a fanboy. It's because I actually think for that application, it's actually a better choice. Now, if you're talking about a microservice, I actually might have a different choice. Might surprise you. No, it's not Pascal either. Pascal isn't a language. No, Pascal is. I was thinking Pascal case, but that's the case that is used in Pascal. Anyways, whatever. Moving on. So if you're in Rust, you should definitely check this out. This is instrument coverage, one of the things that I'm looking for. Which I'm very excited about. This instrument coverage is definitely interesting, and you can basically just enable it and instrument your code, which is pretty cool. The other thing here is timings. So it's basically finally stabilized the support for collecting information on timing your builds. So you can basically see where your builds are struggling and things like that, and give you better insight into that. There's a bunch of other, the very last major feature here is the cargo features. Basically, they just made a little bit better support for their cargo files for dependencies that are maybe optional, and only bringing in those dependencies if they're actually used. So that's pretty cool. And then they have a bunch of other things here that make it a little bit better, and a bunch of things went stable. So if you're wanting to use some of these all went stable. The other thing that they did was the Rust-Lang roadmap for 2024. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed in their roadmap. Their roadmap basically says scaling empowerment. That's like keyword thing. Anyways, scaling empowerment means make it simpler for people to join and use and whatnot. Flatten the learning curve. Again, these are like buzzword central, which I'm a little sad that it was so buzzwordy, but I'm actually I'm a little sad. You know, making Rust easier is good. It is. It is. But for your whole 2024 roadmap being your main theme, I don't know. I don't know. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. Rust should get easier to use. It should. It is a little terse, not gonna lie. I'm not even great at it. So don't even take my code that I've written in Rust as good Rust code. I'm still learning. All right, Rust says another cool tech that can containerize code is WASM. I've started looking at building something in Rust with WASM modules, and I think it might be the future. Yeah, I think you're right that containerize isn't quite the word you were looking for there, but I get where you're going with that. I'm gonna think of a better. I say better way. I'm not sure that I can say it better than you can, especially since maybe I don't quite understand what you're saying. But I'll think of a better way to say what I think you're thinking. You know, that being said, WebAssembly, WASM, is really, really cool. And I need to do videos on it because honestly, I think it's the future of the internet. Not Web3, not Web3. WebAssembly. WebAssembly. All right, so let's talk about Go. Since we were just talking about Rust, let's talk about changes to Go. Go had kind of a big change, but I'm not sure it's actually that big of a change. At least Google is downplaying how big of a change it is. Now, why they decided to make this change, I can only hope it's because of compliance or something like that that kind of forced their hand. But one of their biggest open source projects, not Kubernetes, this one is still owned and operated by them, but many people use it, is the Golang. Google is now requiring 2 Google employees to give the +2 in Gerrit. Gerrit is their if you don't know what Gerrit is their Git repository that's just for Google. And you're pretty much forced to use it if you want to develop on Go. And one of the big problems with this is that, well, Gerrit, it has its own learning curve. We won't get into Gerrit. Gerrit's not all bad. It actually solves some of Google's problems with a monolithic repo. Basically, Google has this problem of they have a mono repo. And so they built a bunch of tools to solve the problem or band-aid the problem instead of actually just fixing the problem. When you have as much money as Google does, you can actually afford to do that. You can just have problems and then fix them with money. That's what Gerrit is. Sorry, Google. Never getting a job at Google. I can't ever get a job at any of these big companies because I've said too much about some of the stupid crap they do, even though this is not me hating on them. Anyways. They're now requiring 2 Google employees, not just Go maintainers. So it used to be that you had to get a number of thumbs up from Go maintainers and at least a single thumbs up from. They have this kind of complex system for Go. The system is this: you can give a +2, a +1, a -1, or a -2. If it's a +2, it means that it has like your full approval. If it's a +1, it says it has your approval, you're not going to block it, but you think it could be better with a few changes. If it's a -1, it means that you're blocking it, but you think that it can be merged, it just needs some of these changes. If it's a -2, you're absolutely against it, you think it's horrifying, and you don't want it to touch your code in any way, and you don't think that it can be fixed. It used to be that you just needed a +1 from a Google employee. And it's changing to where you need at least 1 +2 from a Google employee and a 1 +1 from a Google employee and a +2 from a maintainer. So it's getting much harder for the open source community to actually submit code to the Go language. Now, some are calling for an open source version of Go. Go is open source. It's just owned by Google, and it owns the rights to it. So again, this is not it becoming not open source. It's just Google, which owns it, locking it down more. The CNCF could do the exact same thing. The CNCF actually does require at least a +1 from a maintainer on your pull request. So it's well within their rights to do this. I don't know if it's the right move or not. I don't know why. Google didn't state why they were doing it, and they basically just tried to downplay that they were doing it at all and that it would make any change, which is the reason I'm bringing it up and am spending so much time on it, because I like to bring to light things that companies do that they try to downplay, and they try to downplay this. Web 4 is the future. I think that Russell is correct. All hail Web 4. I'm designing Web 4 right now, and it's all of it, absolutely all of it, is built on consensus. Yeah, it's going to allow you to own your data. It's all built on containers. It's the future. Absolutely consensus in containers. See, I'm combining two things that are fantastic and making something even better. The sum of its parts is greater. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think that's how the saying goes, but anyways, I'm not great at sayings. All right, so let's move on. Fed up managers declare work from home is over, as 77% say they'd fire you or cut your pay for not coming back to the office. If this is you, come talk to me. If you have a manager that's like that hired you as a remote employee and wants to go back on what they hired you as, you can have my personal guarantee I will never go back on what I say. I might say that what I said was wrong, but yeah, I would never change my terms of employment, even if it's not contractually required. That's just a turd move. You know what? I think I've been reading a lot of management books recently because I've kind of been doing a lot more management. And I've come to the conclusion that the people that write these management books don't know how to do management. And really, the core to being a manager: don't be a turd. Don't be a jerk. Treat your employees like you would like to be treated. And be a servant leader. And in my mind, a servant leader is a person who, tries to take the crap out of work, take the worst of the stuff on themselves, and kind of protects their employees. And protect your employees. I don't know. And I'm not claiming to be a great manager. Never will hear that word out of my mouth. But sometimes I wonder if we overcomplicate management. Now, maybe my employees would have different opinion. You should ask them. All right. So let's talk about two open source projects. One we talked about last week, and I want to come back to. One is another one that I found. Go Cloud Native without the trade-offs. So this is Garden. Not to be confused with Gardener, which is what I confused it with at first. So SAP released something a while ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, called Gardener, which is a Kubernetes orchestration tool, which is why it's so close to the same thing. Gardener is kind of the same thing, but it looks to try to empower your workflows and testing. I'm still in the throngs of understanding what it is, but it's out there and it's open source, so you can go check it out. Even in their pricing, they have a cloud offering, but there is this core, which is the open source version of it. So yeah, it's under the MPL 2.0. Not my favorite license, but by far better than the AGPL. So definitely has my support from the license standpoint. So yeah, I don't know. You should check it out. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. If I read more on it, I'll let you guys know. But basically, it's something to help your workflows with Kubernetes. Again, I'm reading more on it. The other open source project that I talked last week about was Dagger, and I've gotten a little bit more familiar with Dagger over the last week. Now, last week I said I couldn't recommend it because I just didn't know, and I'm still in the same boat with Dagger, but I have a little bit more information. I think I see two really good possibilities. So for me, I was evaluating it because we use GitHub Actions. And I was evaluating it if it brought anything more to me than what GitHub Actions did, other than the ability to run on another another Git repository or Git or another CI/CD pipeline. But that doesn't really help me. I don't want to run on another CI/CD pipeline. That's just not really that helpful. And so I would really have been looking at this from, is it helpful to me even with I just want to use GitHub Actions? And I think that there's a couple directions that I'm going that it could actually be helpful, even just using it with no plans of running another CI/CD pipeline. And that is, one, escaping YAML hell, which is a real thing. I actually saw a tweet from a person that's much better at tweeting than me, where they have a picture of hieroglyphics from the Egyptians and say, hey, look, even the ancient Egyptians used YAML. Anyways, I like that. I did. So there's two things that I think are possibly really useful with Dagger. And these are the two that I'm investigating more. The first one is basically having a core team that can build reusable actions for the rest of your team to help empower them and accelerate them and speed up the things that they do. That's the first. The second is being able to debug locally. So I know sometimes GitHub Actions can be very painful to debug locally. You can use things like Act and other projects. I can pull up Act. I will leave it in the... You can use Act, which basically tries to do it locally, but it has a few problems. This is Act, by the way. And if you are using GitHub Actions, you should use Act. It's wonderful for trying to do that, but it's a little bit. It's not that great. Well, it is great. It is great. That's bad word for saying it. It's fantastic, but how it has to work and everything might not. So that is what I'm working on. I think running Dagger locally is actually pretty nice, and I think that might be one of the biggest ploys to me thinking about actually even trying to use it. It has some nice ways of running or creating your actions and reusing them as well, and those are the things that I'm really digging into more in the future. So I'll let you know if I have any more thoughts in the future on that. Russell asks, SAP has a Kubernetes-based product? Yes, let me show it to you. So SAP, I believe, is quite possibly, and this is the most offensive thing you're ever going to hear me think, not think, because you hopefully don't hear me think, but this is going to be the most offensive thing you've heard me say. I believe SAP is the creators of the worst leaders ever. I actually had this conversation with a friend earlier this week where every single time I've seen an executive from SAP hired on a company, the company takes a turn for the worst. SUSE and whatnot. SAP employees or leadership principals have Steve Jobs as a role model. A horrible human being who used child slave labor knowingly in China. This is not an acceptable thing as my standards go. So anyways, I don't cover SAP news very often because I struggle with them as a company. But as they go, SAP has this: deliver fully managed clusters at scale everywhere with your own Kubernetes as a service. So it's basically Kubernetes as a service. So think Rancher, think OpenShift. I don't know why I struggled with that. It's basically that. It's got an interesting way of doing it. So basically, how this works is you have a Kubernetes cluster that is your seed cluster. And basically, the control planes run as pods. So all of your control planes run in as a container in the Gardener cluster. All of the worker nodes run in another area for that one, for that cluster, run outside of that in VMs or whatnot. So it's an interesting architecture, but it definitely is out there. So basically, yeah, cluster API, but kind of, in my opinion, a sucky cluster API. I much prefer cluster API over Gardener. Gardener seems overly complicated to me when I looked it up. It also doesn't seem as declarative as cluster API, and I like supporting the open source community of cluster API. If you guys don't know what, wow, we're going down the rabbit hole. Let me pull up cluster API. I love cluster API. I love the people on cluster API. Cluster API has some of the same people in it that the KubeADM, and those folk are fantastic engineers. Can't say enough about them. Can't say enough good about them. Yeah, here is cluster API. Definitely a cool project to check out. Definitely better than Gardener, and doesn't support a horrible company. So, yep, cluster API. Which allows you, yeah, cluster API would have been a good one to put up there with OpenShift and Fleet, and not Fleet, Rancher. All right. Russell, you've used SAP products before. SAP is the worst. I don't know. I can't imagine how everybody uses them and hasn't just destroyed them. But it's and they keep making executives, and those executives keep going to other companies and ruining those other companies. I cannot. My biggest problem with SAP is that they don't keep their executives. They let their executives leave the company and go to other companies and ruin those companies. That's my biggest problem with SAP. I don't care if it wants to be a horrible company all off over by itself. That's fine. Just please stop letting those executives leave and go into other companies, because that's where I really have the problem. All right, thank you everyone for joining. Absolutely loved your guys' time. Thank you for giving me your time. Thanks for joining me. Remember, if I get over 100 people that at least watch 33%, I will make an audio only version of this as a podcast. So, if you find it helpful, want to share it to some of your friends, I would be appreciative. Appreciative. That's the right word. All right. Thanks all for your time. I loved hanging out with you. Remember, this Saturday, we are going to have some time to hack, so please join in. This is going to be a community thing. You're going to be able to join into the chat in Discord. I maybe didn't say that well enough. Join in the chat in Discord, and you're going to be able to hack along or just help me do it as well. So I'll be streaming my screen, and yeah, it's going to be pretty fantastic, I think. And if we really enjoy doing it, we'll do it more. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have yourselves a fantastic week. Hopefully see you for the book club, and if nothing else, this Saturday for the hacking, or Wednesday for Clustered.